Good morning, I'm Al McNichol, I'm the pastor of Wheatley Community Church.
And I'm Caroline, and we just want to welcome you to the Wheatley Community Church Carol service today. A particular welcome to you if this is your first time with us. I'm aware we might have guests who came along to our Christmas craft evening the other day. Please be very welcome among us. Also, families from Wheatley Primary School, we want to welcome you. And also anyone who's had an invite put through their door, we try to send them far and wide. So a huge welcome to you if this is your first time with us this morning.
Just to give you an idea of what to expect, we're going to sing some carols together. We'll be hearing from some of the children, including watching a video that's been put together by the children at Wheatley Primary. We've got a sketch that our youth have put together with the help of Brandon, our youth worker. And there's also going to be a short talk for the children and another that's more aimed at the grown-ups.
This church service is designed to be child friendly, but if your children are tired of being on screens, then there's a brilliant kids pack that one of our members makes each week, and you can find that on the website, which is wheatleycommunitychurch.org, and then if you look at resources and kids and youth, then you can find the kids pack there. It's easy to download and really worth having a look at because it's just packed full of fun and meaningful activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And this morning there will be some interaction, obviously optional interaction. There'll be a poll for the children later on, just asking them their thoughts on something. There's also at the bottom of your screen, hopefully, a Q&A button. And if there's anything that is mentioned that you want to ask a question about, just type a question away. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of something, somebody will answer you. And if you want to ask for more details about something that we mention, just put it in the Q&A at the bottom and we'll be responsive on that as well. But please do enjoy, and we'll start now with the lighting of the Advent candles.
We light this second Advent candle to remind us of God's good gift of the Bible. The Bible points to Jesus, the light of the world. The Apostle Peter writes, "And we have the word of the prophets made more certain, and you will do well to pay attention to it, as to a light shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your heart."
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round young virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild,
And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth.
Hello again. I hope you enjoy this fantastic Christmas jumper with which I once won Worst Christmas Jumper in the Office contest. But I'm interested to know how this year has been for some of our young people. And to find that out, I want to particularly ask a question about what homeschooling was like. So hopefully in just a second up on your screen, you'll see a poll question. And I'm going to ask, if you are at school at the moment, could you just answer, what has your experience of homeschooling been? And then we'll have the results shared on screen and we'll see how it's been for different people. Great, well, that looks like a lot of people have voted. The most common response, it was boring without my friends. Oh, brilliant, you can see it on screen now, I think. Quite a few people loved it. Some people got to stay in school. A number of people found it really hard. You know, it was a bit of a mix for us as well, actually. But I'd like to tell you a story this morning that's about homeschooling. And it is about a girl called Susie, who perhaps found it a little bit harder than most. Sometimes Susie felt that she was born to be unlucky. Back in March, her whole family had moved away from her friends and her grandparents. Her mum had got a really good new job, and that was great, but she didn't like moving. And then within a week of arriving, the country had gone into lockdown. Mum's new job was no longer on offer, so she spent all her waking hours job hunting, while Dad worked extra hours on his computer to make enough money. And in the midst of all of this, Susie was thrust into online homeschooling with teachers and a class that she had never met. Sitting alone at the kitchen table, Susie didn't dare connect with the morning class video call. The thought of all the new faces all staring at her made her shudder. Instead, each morning she signed into her online learning portal and got to work on the exercises. If she did enough work, she hoped that the teacher would be kind to her when lockdown ended. The trouble was, she was totally out of her depth. After 3 weeks, she still had no idea what a split digraph was, and her maths was a total mess. In fact, with nobody watching her, she'd taken to playing Minecraft whenever it was time to do maths. Nobody was watching, and she didn't understand it anyway, so what was the point? She found the videos from her class teacher stressful, and what was worse was that she had 4 or 5 unread chat messages in the classroom from Mrs. Callahan, who was her new headmistress. There was no way she was going to read them. She already knew what they would be saying. You need to try harder. We're a school for hard-working students, that kind of thing. Every time she saw another message from Callahan Mrs., she shuddered. Then one day, out of nowhere, came the phone call. Susie rushed to answer, as she always did. Mum and Dad were on video calls and mustn't be disturbed. On the other end was the school receptionist, clearly short of time and very brief. Once she had established that Susie's parents were both unavailable, she addressed Susie. Just to let you know that you've got a visitor coming round from the school in about an hour or so. Thanks, bye. Susie panicked. What if it was her class teacher? What if it was Mrs. Callahan? She flicked over to her maths and desperately tried to work out the first question, but she didn't even understand what it meant. She glanced up at the wall. 45 minutes, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, the time was flying past. 20 minutes, 15 minutes. What was she going to do? She briefly toyed with the idea of pretending she wasn't home, but then her parents would have to stop work to answer the door, and then it would be even worse. Perhaps she could pretend to be mad. Nope, that wasn't going to cut it either. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes. The doorbell rang. On the step stood a woman so young and fresh-faced behind her face mask that she could still be at college. "You must be Susie," she said. "My name's Vera. Can I come in?" Susie didn't know what to say or what to do, so she simply led the stranger through to the kitchen, mouthing "school" to her mum as she passed the doorway to her office, and she put the kettle on because she knew that would be polite. Vera sat across the kitchen table from Susie, took off her mask, and sipped at her tea. The silence hung in the air until Susie could bear it no longer. "I can't do the work, and I haven't done the work, and I don't know how to do the work, and I don't know anybody, and I'm sorry, but I just can't do it." The words tumbled out any old how, and Susie didn't care that a few tears squeezed out too. She knew that this lady, whoever she was, would be angry. She knew she was failing at school, but she simply couldn't pretend any longer. But to her surprise, Vera didn't get angry. "It's okay," she said calmly. "I'm here to help you, not to get angry. Things must have been hard for you, moving just before lockdown. I imagine you must be missing your friends. Tell me about it." Totally disarmed by the gentle words, Susie hesitated, then started to speak. She shared about her mum's new job, about the move, about her old friends who she only saw once a week on Zoom, the difficulty of not knowing anyone, and her utter dread of Mrs. Callahan. Vera listened patiently, never interrupting except to agree that it was a really hard situation. And then they opened up her English work and spent half an hour looking it over together. By the end, it seemed a lot less daunting. Only once did she look stern. When Susie said that she couldn't get the maths work to load on her laptop, Vera looked her straight in the eyes and said, "That's not quite true, is it, Susie?" And Susie suddenly found that it was easier to simply tell the truth. "I gave up and started playing Minecraft instead." Vera didn't bat an eyelid, but said steadily, "Thank you for being honest. You know that you need to stop doing that now, don't you?" And it was true. Susie did know that she had to stop it and felt that perhaps she could. Finally, a couple of hours later, Vera stood up to leave. Putting her cup in the sink, she walked with Susie back to the front door and let herself out. She turned on the doorstep, caught sight of Susie's expression and said, "There's something else you want to say, isn't there?" It's Mrs. Callahan," said Susie. "She's already sent me lots of messages. I know I've fallen behind, but I'm going to try to catch up, but I don't want her to be angry with me and tell my parents that I'm lazy or stupid. What's she like? Does she get angry? Can you try to explain to her for me, please?" "I don't need to explain anything to her," Vera said. And even though she now had her face mask on again, Susie could see from her eyes that she was smiling. "You already have. My name's Vera Callahan, and it's been lovely getting to know you, Susie." Then she smiled, turned, and walked back to the car. Now, Jesus often explained what God was like by telling stories just like that story about Susie. You see, Susie didn't know what the head teacher was like, but she expected her to be strict and angry. The head teacher was trying to help Susie, but because Susie didn't know that her head teacher was good, the only way through to her was to pay her a visit so Susie could see and hear what she was like. And when she visited, even though she was stern about playing games during maths, she didn't come to condemn Susie or to get angry, but to help her. Susie didn't recognize her until the very end because she didn't look or act like she'd expected. And this is what the Bible tells us about God. We didn't know him or believe that he was good and kind, so he came to visit us, to show us what he's like and to help us. Not everybody recognized him, but eventually many did. One of his followers and friends, a man called John, wrote it like this in the book that he wrote in the Bible. "The Word, that is God, became human and made his home among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." At Christmas, we celebrate Jesus coming to visit us God made human to show us that he is good and full of grace and truth. We're going to sing another carol now, Once in Royal David City. And after that, we're going to hear from our youth, and then there'll be a talk for the adults. So let's go over now to Once in Royal David City.
Once in royal David city stood a lonely cattle shed, where a mother laid her baby in a manger for his bed. Mary was that mother marked, Jesus Christ, her little child.
Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away.
Throw cares away? What? Who wrote this? When was this written? And hark, what does that mean? Is that one of these words that the news have been making up recently? Like, how do you pronounce it? Furlough? Flatten the curve? This is not a song for 2020. Throw cares away. Just because I heard some bells, this year began innocently enough.
Happy New Year!
Gonna be a great year.
Welcome back, Roaring Twenties, am I right?
Thank goodness, can't be worse than 2019.
And then the news started pouring in.
As wildfires continue to burn in Australia.
Oh no! All those cute koalas!
All those people.
Thoughts and prayers for Austria.
It's Australia.
Never been to either, so...
We watched and prayed the year improve from there.
Today we mourn the loss of basketball great Kobe Bryant.
But it didn't.
in a helicopter crash on the way to his daughter's basketball game. Oh man.
And while we process that,
Impeachment proceedings continue as a President of the United States.
and when we thought we were through with that,
Lockdowns go into place in the city of Wuhan to try and control the spread of, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, coronavirus?
Man, I would hate to be them. But,
Those poor people.
wow, 2020 is really great. It's going viral.
Coronavirus is serious.
and that's about when things got contentious.
Is it? Well, I would tell a COVID joke, but I don't want to wait 2 weeks to see if you get it.
The World Health Organization declared a pandemic.
They what now?
You mean it's coming here?
It's already here.
So what we're gonna do?
Wash your hands.
Don't touch your face.
Hashtag stay home.
It's all a hoax, right?
Stay home? We can't all stay home, right? The kids have got to go to school.
School's
is
cancelled.
What?
This is all very suspicious.
What do you mean school's cancelled?
We're just not going to do it anymore.
I have to go to work. Who's going to watch the kids?
Work is
is
cancelled.
cancelled.
I lost my job.
Temporarily.
So what do we do?
Just stay home.
See what you've done? She's out of work now. Are you happy?
Let's binge watch some shows for 3 months straight.
I finished Netflix. What else is on?
So we're going to be stuck at home watching the news all day. I mean, how bad can it be?
Using excessive force during demonstrations, in particular rubber bullets and tear gas.
We should march and protest.
It all has to stop.
This can't go on.
It keeps happening.
Inject some bleach.
He couldn't breathe.
What should I do? What should I say?
Take a knee.
Have you posted a black square?
If you stay silent, you're part of the problem.
Stand if you're a patriot.
Speak truth to power.
As a Christian, what should I do?
Wash your hands.
Never in a million years.
Unprecedented.
Wear your
The
mask.
problem.
Black Lives Matter.
If you want it, sure.
Boycott Netflix.
6 feet apart.
If you stay silent, you're part of the problem.
Take a knee.
Stop. And listen. Listen. Do you hear it? God, what a mess we've made. What a mess we are. We've come to Christmas with our decorations and our sweaters to fight the long nights and the never-ending cold. Christmas is a string of lights in the dead of winter. And it makes no difference if it's just our lights. A string of lights overwhelmed by the blackness of winter. What a mess. But if you listen. God came down to earth for us. Not the version in our sweaters and our pretty lights. Not the version we bring to Christmas Eve service. He came down for us. For the mess. God looked at us in our worst state and said, I will redeem that. I will sacrifice for that mess. I will send my son to die for them. And that is incredible. You can't help but shake your head and wonder. In the darkness, in the mayhem, in the dysfunction, in the noise, God came for us. He came not under a cheap string of coloured lights, but under a shining star. He came not blaring into the noise as another voice in the argument, but on a silent night. He came as the light, as a still, small voice, if you listen. Gloria in Excelsis Deo.
Angels from the realms of glory, wing your flight o'er all the earth. You sang creation's story, now proclaim Messiah's birth. Christ, the newborn King. Shepherds in the fields abiding, watching o'er your flocks by night. God with men is now residing. Yonder shines the infant light. Come and worship, come and worship. Worship Christ, the newborn King.
Good morning. My name's Tim Hinks and I'm a member here at Wheatley Community Church, along with my wife Naomi, who many of you all have met on Friday evening at the craft event showing her Pudini bonbons. And I hope the craft evening will have given you lots of ideas and enthusiasm for how we can celebrate Christmas this year. Christmas is going to be very different this year, with no awkward office parties, no crowds on the high street, no extended family round for Christmas lunch. Actually, many of the festivities we enjoy have been stripped away, so this year may feel rather empty. A lonely end to a year of isolation. And yet there is some good in this, because when all the trimmings of Christmas are stripped away, we're given a fresh chance to think again about Christmas and to ponder its real meaning. So we're going to spend a few minutes now just looking at a single sentence from the Bible, from a book called John. We've already heard it read out by Poppy and seen the words from the children. It's also written on the back of this invitation card, if you've had one of those. Or if you've got a Bible, it's John chapter 1, verse 14. In this verse, I believe God has a message for each of us. And he wants us to think through that message this Christmas. As COVID has happened, I feel that God has been pressing the pause button on our lives and telling us just to stop and listen to him. And this is his message today. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. This Christmas, I'd ask you to take those words to heart. Maybe put the invitation card somewhere prominent you can read it. And let the truths sink in. To help you, I'm going to unpack this verse with 4 words. And the first of these is this: history. The claims of Christianity are unique amongst the world's religions because they're rooted in eyewitness historical facts. These words were written by John, one of Jesus' closest friends and disciples. He writes, "We have seen his glory." What we're dealing here with is history. Eyewitness historical facts. It's confirmed by multiple independent eyewitnesses. The events are real history, falsifiable and reliable. We have seen his glory. These eyewitnesses record what they saw. They knew Jesus personally, they touched him, they lived with him. And we know from historical records both in the Bible and outside the Bible, from other contemporary sources, that Jesus of Nazareth was a real historical figure. So the eyewitnesses are named. Current events are accurately recorded. Names of people and places are given. Current political events are noted, as are the names of religious leaders. And geographical details, architectural details. The events of Jesus' life are woven into the fabric of first century Israel. I wonder what you would say was the most glorious thing you have ever seen. You may know that my family and I spent a couple of years living in Australia, so I can say I have seen koalas and cockatoos and platypus. I've swum on coral reefs. I've watched the sun set over the Great Dividing Range. I've tasted a real Aussie barbecue. I've smelt the eucalyptus gum. I felt the sand of Squeaky Beach between my toes. You see, I have seen the glories of Australia. John writes, we have seen his glory. He has seen and knows Jesus. So this means that the facts of Christmas are not on a par with Harry Potter or Frodo and his friends or Shrek. The claims of Christianity are that it's true. After the Watergate scandal, 7 men couldn't keep the truth secret for 1 week. But with Jesus, 11 men went to their graves claiming that what they had seen and witnessed was truth. So this Christmas, will you read their accounts? The Gospels are a fantastic read. Perhaps a friend invited you to the craft evening. Well, they'd be happy to read through that book of John with you. Or you could check out our Alpha course. We've had great fun earlier this year exploring the meaning of life with a group of people from Wheatley. And Al and I would be delighted to hear from you again if you'd like to take part in one of those this year. So if the first word was history, the second word is divinity. Jesus of Nazareth was no less than God the Almighty Creator in human form. John calls Jesus the Word. A word reveals you. If I stop speaking, you can't know me. A word reveals someone. It's through words that we communicate, and God has spoken in a person. That person was Jesus. Earlier in his book, John writes, in the beginning was the Word. You see, the claim of this verse is that Jesus is the one who was there in the beginning, before the universe was created, and then he stepped into history at that point 2,000 years ago when he was born as a baby in a manger. You see, the claim that Christianity presents to us is that the baby in the manger is the God who created you, the universe, this earth, and who breathed life into you. No wonder that they trembled at the word of Jesus. No wonder that they were humbled by the power of Jesus. No wonder that they marveled at the purity of Jesus. No wonder that they worshipped at the feet of Jesus. You won't find this claim in any other religion or philosophy. And you see, it explains the things that Jesus did. How is it that he turned water into wine? How is it that he fed 5,000 people? How did he walk on the water and calm the raging storm? How did he get that power over evil? Why did angels sing their chorus of praise? Jesus is the Word of God. You could say that Jesus is God unmuted. When we want to see God, we look to Jesus. He's like the live-action replay of what God did in all his high definition. Jesus once said to his friend, Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen God. So to find God this Christmas, we don't have to go to an old chapel or a beautiful cathedral. God will only be found in Jesus. If you read on through John's Gospel, you'll find that Jesus says things that only God can say. Jesus knows things that only God can know, like telling the woman at the well her life story no one else knew. Jesus does what only God can do, raising the dead man, Lazarus, to life. At the cross, God dies. And then 3 days later, he appears as a resurrected Lord to 500 people, even to doubters like Thomas. Jesus is divine. The pilgrimage for God ends in Jesus. Every other route is a dead end. Many won't accept this. The atheists won't allow the supernatural to happen, but the reasoning is flawed. I will not allow Jesus to be God because I won't allow supernatural things to happen. That's like saying I will not allow this evidence because it doesn't fit my conclusions. You don't have to be a scientist like me to spot the error. No, Jesus did supernatural things because that's what God does. Sometimes we have to radically change our thinking. In 1892, Dmitry Ivanovsky and Martinus Beijerinck found that an infection could be caused by something far smaller than a bacterium. It couldn't be seen, it could be crystallized, it wasn't even alive. So they called it a virus. It didn't fit with their view of the world, but the evidence fitted the conclusions, and it required a radical rethink. So too of Jesus. The Word became flesh. Why were the shepherds filled with joy? Well, the Word of God dwelt amongst us. Who brought the wise men from the east? We have seen his glory. Why did Mary ponder and worship? He was full of grace and truth. So what about you? Are you prepared to look at the evidence and accept that the baby in the manger is the Lord Almighty, who formed you in your mother's womb, who knows everything about you, and who holds you in his hands? History, divinity. Our third word is intimacy. God stepped into this world because he cared about you enough to die for you. Social distancing has taught us that we're built for relationships with each other and for relationship with God. And he wants us to live in relationship with him, no matter what that cost him. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling amongst us. Perhaps you know the words of a Jane Osborne song, "What if God was one of us?" She says, if God had a name, what would it be? And would you call it to his face? If you're faced with him in all his glory, what would you ask if you had just one question? What if God was one of us? If God had a face, what would it look like? And would you want to know if seeing meant that you would have to believe in Jesus and in heaven and in all the saints? The message of Christmas is just that. God has become one of us. He's not chosen to remain remote. Perhaps for some of us, social distancing is a bit of a relief, an excuse to avoid the stress of that family gathering at Christmas. We're happier with 15 minutes on Zoom. Because relationships can be messy. There can often be a past history of hurt. But God's not into social distancing. He's not happy just doing Zoom. God knows the mess we've made of life, and yet he still wants to be part of our relationship. Jesus knows that we've turned away from him, and that he knows the secrets in our hearts, the dark that, if we're honest, is there in each one of us. But he still came to become one of us. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling amongst us. And that dwelling will last forever. The Bible ends with an amazing vision that God showed to John. He said, now the dwelling of God is with man, and he will live with us, and they with him. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. Perhaps you find that hard to believe. If God really knew me, knew the things I've done, known the wrong in my heart, he wouldn't want to be with me. But Jesus knows it all. He knows your heart better even than you. By nature, we don't want to recognize God. We don't want to receive him into our hearts, and yet, despite that, despite the rejection, he came to dwell amongst us. In 1873, the 33-year-old missionary, Father Damien, was in Hawaii, and he heard that over 600 men had been exiled to the small island of Molokai because they had leprosy. They were unable to grow food for themselves and to care for themselves. Father Damien volunteered to go and be with them. There was no PPE. The disease was transmissible and incurable. Knowing the risks, he went and lived amongst them, dwelt amongst the lepers. He served as a priest, dressed their altars, built a reservoir, a church, homes. He built their coffins and dug their graves. He taught them, he led them, he ate with them. And after 11 years, he caught the leprosy from them that ultimately led to his death. And so too with Jesus. He was not ashamed to live with us, disfigured as we are by the wrong in our lives, helpless as we are without him. He didn't scorn poverty, rejection, and suffering on our behalf. And ultimately, he knew it would cost him his life to save us. So what about you? Jesus came to dwell amongst us, to have a relationship with you. If we want to hold Jesus at arm's length, the truth is out about us that we don't want to know him. It's a choice many make. But why would you? The Word became flesh and made his dwelling amongst us. God wants to be in your life. Will you invite him in? History, divinity, intimacy. Lastly, mercy. God sent his son Jesus to show his mercy. We're told the Son came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Well, grace is God's undeserved favour to us. By nature, we've turned our backs on God, and we deserve his judgment. But instead, he mercifully showers upon us blessing and favour and grace. He came to wash away every sin in our lives, to free us from all the guilt in the past and leave us with a new life ahead of him. He wants to fill us with joy. That's why he sent Jesus, to give us life in all its fullness. Jesus came from the Father, full of grace and truth. In this world of fake news, deceits and half-lies, Jesus came to bring truth, solid, dependable, reliable truth. And sometimes that truth can be uncomfortable and costly, because the truth is that the wrongdoing in our lives, in your life and mine, needs to be punished. Jesus is full of grace, but he does not compromise that truth. And that's why the Word became flesh, that nails would go through his hands. For years I struggled to understand what the cross was all about, and then I discovered two sentences in a book called Romans. The first said that God did this to demonstrate his justice, that he would punish the sin and not compromise his truth. The second wonderfully says that God did this to demonstrate his mercy. It was God's grace to us, his mercy to you, that the person on the cross was not you or me, but Jesus. He came from the Father full of grace and truth. So let me finish by saying, do we not need this? Do we not need to reconnect with the Word made flesh, full of grace and truth? Grace is being able to receive things that we simply don't deserve, a relationship with our Creator. He knows you through and through. He loves you, and he entered into the squalor of this world with all that's so wretched about it, so that you might know him. Perhaps you're a Christian and have been for many years. Well, can I ask you again that this Christmas you'll be thankful for these truths? Will you take time to delight that God the Father sent his Son and he overflowed into your life with grace and truth? Perhaps you need more time to know him better. Well, read a gospel, talk to a friend who invited you along, or find out about our Alpha course. Or just perhaps you're ready to respond. And it's as simple as sorry, thank you, please. Saying sorry to God that I've neglected you and run my life my own way. Thank you for sending Jesus to die in my place on that cross. Please forgive me and take control of my life. Thank you for listening. Let me close with a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for sending your Son, full of grace and truth. We're sorry for the times we've pushed you out of our lives. We thank you for sending Jesus. Please help us to live our lives your way. Amen. Thank you.
Glory to the King.
It's been so lovely to have you with us this morning. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, we can't mill around over coffee and mince pies, but we're in the habit of, at the end of church, getting into breakout rooms and having a natter with each other. So if you're a guest today and you'd like to join, you are really more than welcome, but there's absolutely no pressure to do so. Also, if you're a regular, please do that. Al will tell you how to do that now.
Yeah, so to get to the breakout rooms, all you have to do is head back to the website, and in the church online section, just click the Sunday morning meeting link and you'll be put into a breakout room. So it isn't the end of this call, you do have to rejoin. If you have the carol service page open in front of you, just refresh it and the chat link will appear there as well to join in the breakout rooms. Particularly if you're not a regular churchgoer, you might have questions or things that you want to discuss further. So if so, please do just get in touch. Either drop something in the Q&A now, or speak to the friend who invited you if you were invited personally, or else on our website there's a contact us form, and do just drop a message. It'll come through to me and I'd love to hear from you. That would be fantastic.
Hopefully you'll have heard about Candlelight Carols this evening. It's an exciting thing that we're doing this year. So at 5:40 BBC Radio Oxford, we're going to have 2 carols played, and we're going to be standing on our doorsteps, a bit like the NHS Big Clap, but standing on our doorsteps and singing 2 carols together. Please do that. It'd be lovely to have communities doing that together. It'd be really fun. You can find out more about that on
oxfordchristmas.co.uk.
There you go. And also, if you're a young person and you are interested in coming along, we have a village youth group. At the moment it's online, but we're hoping early next year, we might get back to be able to meeting in person. But that's on a Sunday evening. This week, we're just gathering together and playing games. It's a really fun opportunity to do that. So if you would like to do that, please do put something on the Q&A section, or speak to join a breakout room afterwards and speak to someone, or again you can just email us at the church office. So that's an open invite to anyone secondary school age.
I should have mentioned before that recording of Hark the Herald Angels Sing featured Wheatley Primary School as well as 2 other local ODST primary schools, and that's one of the carols that we're going to be using when we sing this afternoon and on subsequent Sunday evenings as well on our doorsteps. We'll be singing Hark the Herald, so do look forward to that. That video and all the other videos we've shown this morning will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch, I don't know, the youth sketch again, Dan's just showing you now what that looks like. You can just search Wheatley Community Church on YouTube and you'll see all of this material and pretty much everything else we've ever done as well. So do make use of that. It'll be really good. On Christmas morning, we are meeting again for a Christmas Day service, and that will be at 10:30. We are going to be meeting online, but we're also, and currently regulations allow this and we're not expecting that to change, we're also going to congregate in a socially distanced way outside at the Wheatley Rec.
Weather permitting.
Weather permitting. But to be honest, some of us are so keen just to to sing a few carols that we might even brave the rain with an umbrella. But the regulations currently allow us to sing outside as long as we are socially distanced and very careful, and we're really hoping to do that. But we will also be online because obviously some people have to be far more careful than others and may not be comfortable gathering outside, or you may just not fancy braving the rain. But do please join us on Christmas Day if you have a chance. If you haven't already spotted it, do keep an eye out around Wheatley for the Advent Windows project. And you can Google that to find Wheatley Advent Windows, but you'll probably have spotted already 1 or 2 windows about the place that are lit up every evening, and more will be lit up throughout the Advent period. All of that, probably quite a lot to take in. We will send 1 email to all participants at the end of this service because you entered your email addresses at the beginning. If you haven't given us your email for any other reason, that will be the only email that you'll receive from us, but we'll just put those bits of information and anything else relating to this morning's service in there for you so that you have it. Okay, well, so breakout rooms will open on the other link in about 5 to 10 minutes, but first of all, we're just going to finish by listening to O Come, Emmanuel as an instrumental version, and after that, you can go and join the breakout rooms. If this has been your first time with us, again, really, really lovely to have you with us. And we look forward to catching up with you on a future Sunday or maybe Christmas Day as well.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. God bless.